Welcome to the Enriching Book Club, where we take the greatest ideas ever written and bring them to life for the modern mind. Which timeless masterpiece are we unlocking today? Let's find out.
Let's jump right in. Imagine today is your 100th birthday. The mayor's waiting, the cake is cut, the whole party is ready to go, and you just decide to climb out the window. Welcome to our explainer of Jonas Jonason's absolutely brilliant and profoundly funny comic novel, The 100-Year-Old Man Who Climbed Out of the Window and Disappeared. Today, we're diving into a story where an entire century of major world history is accidentally shaped by one very relaxed, very unassuming guy. It's this fantastic blend of adventure, historical fiction, and razor-sharp satire that completely flips our understanding of destiny and chance right on its head.
So, right off the bat, we have to ask ourselves a pretty fundamental question about societal expectations. What exactly are you supposed to do when society throws you a 100th birthday party? I mean, for most of us, the expectation is you sit quietly in your nursing home, you eat a slice of cake with the local mayor, and you gracefully accept your decline into extreme old age, right? But our protagonist, Alan Carlson, he has absolutely zero interest in playing that role. On the exact day of his heavily planned, highly anticipated centenary celebration, he decides he just wants out. He wants freedom.
And what's really fascinating is that at the core of Alan's wildly unpredictable life is this simple philosophy of radical acceptance. His motto? Things are what they are, and whatever will be, will be. Now, Alan has almost no political opinions, practically zero fear, and this unwavering belief that worrying accomplishes literally nothing. Instead of trying to fiercely control his life or, panic when things go totally off the rails, Alan simply responds to whatever happens next. It's a remarkably zen approach, and honestly, it sets the stage for every crazy thing that follows.
And let me tell you, whatever happens next turns out to be completely wild. With deadpan practicality, Alan kicks off what we can only describe as an accidental heist. Picture this. He quietly climbs out his nursing home window in his slippers. He wanders over to the local bus station, where he impulsively agrees to watch a stranger's suitcase while the guy uses the restroom. Then, his bus arrives, the stranger isn't back yet, so Alan just boards the departing bus, taking the suitcase with him. What he absolutely does not know is that this suitcase is stuffed with a massive fortune belonging to a violent criminal gang. And just like that, an absurd, high-stakes cross-country adventure is born. Now, as Alan goes on the run, he doesn't exactly assemble an elite team of highly trained operatives. Instead, he gathers this hilarious crew of misfits who completely shatter their societal labels. We've got Julius, supposedly a petty criminal, who actually steps up as a fiercely loyal friend. Then there's Benny, a highly educated student whose absolutely terrible luck provides some brilliant comic relief. We have Gunilla, your ordinary everyday citizen who brings this essential emotional warmth to the group. Oh, and incredibly, we have Sonia. Sonia is an actual, literal elephant who essentially serves as the ultimate symbol for the joyful absurdity of this entire journey. This whole setup brilliantly illustrates the novel's core satire, which is the stark contrast between modern society and Alan himself. You see, society and its bureaucracies are totally driven by panic, rigid rules, and massive overcomplication. The police are launching these ridiculously incompetent investigations, and the criminal organizations basically just keep defeating themselves. And then, you have Alan. He's armed with nothing but calm, common sense, total flexibility, and an absolute refusal to panic. The book is really just laughing at humanity's tendency to overcomplicate the simplest situations, showing how Alan's straightforward adaptability beats modern bureaucracy every single time. But here is the crucial point. Alan's present-day escape, that's really only half the story. Running parallel to his modern-day adventure is his past, which unfolds as a literal century of unbelievable, totally accidental influence on global events. Back in the 1930s, he accidentally ends up dining with Francisco Franco during the Spanish Civil War. In the 1940s, he somehow finds himself aiding the Manhattan Project and having a chat with Harry Truman. By the 50s and 60s, he is bumping into Stalin, Mao, Kim Il-sung, and influencing Charles de Gaulle during major diplomatic crises. And he's navigating these revolutions and espionage missions not because he wants to, but purely by coincidence.
So, you're probably wondering, how on earth does an ordinary Swedish guy with zero political ambition keep getting invited into these incredibly powerful rooms? Well, the answer is remarkably simple: explosives. Alan didn't influence these massive historical events through any sort of grand master plan. He simply got involved because he was polite, highly practical, and exceptionally good at blowing things up. From a literary perspective, it's fascinating because explosives serve as a symbol throughout his entire life.
They represent humanity's dual capacity to use our intelligence for either incredible progress or utter catastrophe, depending entirely on whose hands they end up in.
By casually placing Alan in these historic rooms, the author is making a very deliberate point about how we view the past. Think about it. So many history books operate on the great man theory. You know, the idea that careful planning and extraordinary visionary leaders deliberately shape civilization. But Jonasson completely reverses that. In his universe, powerful leaders are often vain, foolish, or just deeply confused. It suggests that history is actually shaped by pure chance, bizarre coincidences, and endless blundering. Alan repeatedly influences these enormous world-altering decisions just by being in the wrong place at the right time, proving that history itself is way less rational than we like to imagine.
And a huge part of how Alan actually survives all these crazy historical encounters is his absolute political neutrality. Alan point-blank refuses to form an emotional attachment to any ideology whatsoever. He interacts with communists, fascists, and capitalists alike, and he treats terrifying dictators with the exact same casual politeness that he gives to democratic presidents. It's a really humorous but deeply provocative stance by the author. It suggests that ordinary human decency, common sense, and adaptability matter far, far more in the grand scheme of life than any rigid political label ever could. Now, as we break down Alan's story, it becomes pretty clear that the physical elements of his journey aren't just there for a quick laugh. They're actually profound symbols. Take the window, for example. That's his literal and figurative liberation from society's crushing expectations of what aging looks like. Then you have the suitcase. That perfectly represents how life-changing opportunities often just arrive through pure, unadulterated chance, regardless of how much we plan. And of course, Sonia the elephant. She beautifully represents uncorrupted innocence, reminding us that some of our greatest joys come from life's most improbable, unexpected friendships.
All of which brings us right back to this number, 100. This novel fiercely rejects the common societal belief that hitting old age just automatically equals an inevitable decline into a boring, static existence. By climbing out of that window at a century old, Alan is showing us that human curiosity never actually expires. Adventure has no expiration date. Age, as the novel argues, is largely just a state of mind, and the freedom you allow yourself to have is entirely up to you, no matter how many candles are crammed on your birthday cake.
So if we distill this entire wild story down to its core takeaways, we're basically left with the philosophy of Alan Carlson. First off, never cling to rigid expectations because life is going to inevitably disrupt them anyway. Second, use laughter and humor as your go-to tool to endure uncertainty, rather than just giving into panic. Third, we have to accept that both grand global history and our own daily lives are inherently irrational. And finally, your absolute greatest strength will always be your flexibility. Remaining highly adaptable to whatever happens next is literally the key to survival and happiness. As we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with a final, provocative question drawn right from the optimism of Alan's journey. Life is absolutely full of unexpected possibilities. So when your next unexpected suitcase arrives, maybe a chance encounter or a sudden massive change in plans, how are you going to react? Are you going to desperately try to control the outcome, or will you, like Alan Carlson, embrace the absurdity, climb out the window, and just see what happens?